if you have a better idea than what you're working on right now, and you have a lot of conviction that this is a way better project you should be doing, but you're stuck with this, that's a time.
So that was very important
Yes.
thing that if you are doing it, if you're building a business, build it with passion. Otherwise, exit.
Not working from home, that sort of twilight zone, Groundhog Day of wake up, go to your couch or your kitchen table or your desk or whatever you have and working and then going back and never getting that break between, never socializing like in person, not being around people, not getting a breather. It is really bad for
So
them.
when you are providing a services to a company so what are the marketing essentials you offer to?
I mean, it really depends on the company. It's we have a list of probably 50 different services we can provide depending on what the company needs. It's really finding, depending on the brand, depending on the stage of the company, depending on the budgets, depending on what we're already seeing from their data. If they're not brand new, we can actually start to see like what's already working, what's not. We're going to plug in what we think would be the best channels to get their name out there and really convert that into revenue.
Hello everyone, my name is Ali. I'm the CEO of Al-Burraq Technologies. It's been a lot of time. We are presenting a lot of tech stars to your screens. And now we have Erik today with us. He has done a great work in the marketing stuff, and we are going to ask him to give him his introduction. How are you, Erik?
Good. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing good. Erik, please introduce yourself so that our audience can connect with you.
Sure. Erik, founder and CEO of Hawke Media. We've built the top performance marketing agency in the US. So we've run marketing and helped grow over 4,500 brands. We have a venture fund that we invest in a lot of the top marketing and e-commerce technologies out there. We've built our own AI system, do a lot of investing in real estate and other angel investing as well. I'm an owner in the LA women's soccer team, amongst a lot of other things. So yeah, I think that all rounds it, but running about a 200-person agency right now.
Right. Managing 4,500 clients is a big number.
Yeah,
So
not at the same
how,
time, to be fair.
right. Yeah. So how do you manage such a large numbers?
Yeah, so actively it's about 500, and honestly, it's just having great people. So if you think about it, we're 200 people and 500 clients. That means 2.5 companies per person on an average basis. Like, obviously, it doesn't work quite that way, but that's doable, and that's the model that we built. And the idea behind this was the idea of fractional marketing help. Being able to work with you and a few other brands at the same time was actually much more efficient, where we can actually charge less than the salary of that person by a significant amount, because you don't need full-time experts high level on most of these marketing solutions. You need part-time experts. And so understanding that, we were able to offer that in a way that made it profitable for us and also a lot more efficient for our clients, where they could get great marketing talent and great people, but at a cheaper price than we'd be able to get them.
But when you talk about the cheaper price and talking about providing marketing services, in marketing services, everybody has a different perspective. And when you are building a company that is marketing specific, so in that, your thought process is needed. So how do you manage that part when the expert thought process is delivered to the clients as well?
Well, that's the idea, is you have to have good talent. Like, it definitely cannot just come from me. Like, we have a team of incredible marketers, and the idea is they're experts in their specific field. So we have, whether it's meta advertising experts or Google or TikTok or email marketing or web design, we have incredible people in those fields that, depending on what the customer needs, we can spin those people up and bring them in so that they have that full funnel and that full marketing team that they would need. And it can change and ebb and flow as their needs change.
Right. And you have done some exits as well in e-commerce as well. Tell us about that. What were those products, and how were your exits?
Sure. Yeah. So before starting Hawke, I guess quick story short, I got out of college right before the whole banking industry collapsed in 2008, and went into real estate, which was the worst time in real estate since the Great Depression. So I worked in that for a year, but about 6 months in, realized it was not going to be a good path for me. And so I started working on an online business, ended up launching an online music company and raising $1 million for it in 2009. Built that for 2 years, got it to profitability, and then decided to move on. Realized it was never going to be a huge business. I built out this company called Swag of the Month that was basically one of the first e-commerce subscription companies, and built that for a year and a half, sold it to a holding company, and then got recruited by the incubator that had just launched Dollar Shave Club to help advise for their companies, and was helping with the marketing strategy on their companies, because that's really where I focused on my own company, Swag of the Month, and ended up focusing on a company called Ellie. It was actually originally called Puravit, which was a vitamin company that was failing miserably. I helped them pivot to become an activewear subscription company, similar to my t-shirt subscription site. And we launched it. It skyrocketed. And after a year, we sold that to Bally Total Fitness, a gym chain and fitness company out here. And I was asked to come work for them, and I didn't want to. So I started consulting, and then I started consulting some other brands, and I started to realize how broken the marketing ecosystem was. And when it came time to actually execute on marketing that drove revenue growth, none of these companies were good at that. And all these companies were snake oil salesmen. 99% of agencies are horrible still to this day. And at the time, there were about 25,000 digital agencies in the US, is in 2013. Today, there's 88,000. And it's this crazy to me that there's all these agencies. None of I, got a note today from a 19-year-old that just started his own marketing agency and is telling me how difficult it is because he doesn't know how to do any marketing. It's like, then why are you starting a marketing agency? So this is a challenge in our industry. And the agencies that get good get really expensive and hard to work with. And so I wanted to create something that could help all these companies and was reasonable to work with and really focused on revenue growth and building business. And that's what we did. And fast forward, it's been a great almost 10 years. We'll be a decade old in the middle of January.
Right, right. That was very summarized. But here I want to ask one more questions related to that. In the startups or in the startup ecosystem, exits are very important, right? But what is the thought process when you are doing an exit, that this is the right time to exit
Yeah.
from my company and do something else? What is the
Yeah.
right time, and what is the thought process?
I would say it's when you're done, because I actually think people overemphasize the exit. There's two parts to this. One is, investors expect a 5-year horizon. Depending on the state of the company, they want 5 to 10 years. So like somewhere in there, you got to be strategizing on how to pay your investors back. But there's other ways to do that than just selling the company. So that's one part of it, depending on how you raise money. If you don't raise money, it's all about like when you think you're done, when you have a better opportunity to work on, or you don't want to do it anymore. Like that's a big part of it, is like, are you, this happens to a lot of founders. It's like they love it, they love it, they love it, and then they hate it. And to build a business and put in what you need to, if you don't like running it, becomes very hard and also unproductive. And so that's a point where if you want your company to continue to breathe life and you're not in it fully passionate anymore, that could be a time to sell. If it's not, that's not the case. There's also situations where you go, the market's crazy. Like what happened in 2021, for a lot of smart people, was the market was so crazy that even though I wasn't planning on selling this, it's worth so much more than it frankly should be. Maybe this is the time to do it because I want to maximize my outcome. But for a lot of people, a lot of founders, it's not about the money. Like, frankly, if you build a decently successful business, you probably aren't worrying about how much money you're making. In the sense of like the survival side, the paying your bills, living a decent life, like that barrier is not as high as people think. I talk to a lot of, 100 million centimillionaires, billionaires. Most of them, their lifestyle costs them, $1 million to $2 million a year, which I get it. In the average, sort of what everyone's making, that's crazy. But when you're talking about 100 millionaires and billionaires, most of them living off 1 to 2 million a year, like the rest of that money is unnecessary for them from a lifestyle perspective, because then it's just a scoreboard. How much can I build this business out and keep growing and keep building? And so understanding that, most people, if you get to that point that you can make 1 to 2 a year, you don't have to sell for your own financial gain. Like that's not going to make you, all that happens when you make more money than that, you can buy bigger or more houses, better or more cars, a bigger or better jet, and a bigger or better boat. Like literally that's what their money goes to, or you invest it. And it just, but then again, great. So you're making more money that you don't need. So it really comes down to people that sell either have to return the money to investors, or they're done. They don't want to do it anymore. And it's time to get out and take their money out and maybe move on and do something else. And that's what I see most of the time. And for me, I sold Swag of the Month because we hit a point where we couldn't sustain the way we were working. And it was either raise a bunch of money or sell or shut it down. Like it was just not sustainable in the way, like we couldn't make enough money to cover the things we needed to organically. Unit economics were great, but the actual size of the business hadn't gotten big enough yet to like really build the team we needed. And we didn't know how to raise money. Like I know I said I raised $1 million for my first business, Fame Wizard, the music company, but that was because that was a quick, like a close connection that I had. I didn't know how to like do the sort of dog and pony show and go do the road show of raising money from a bunch of VCs. So I pitched one VC, got a no, and at the time I was 24 years old. I was like, well, I guess that's a no. Like, I guess we won't raise money from VCs. We didn't have all the news and all the podcasts and everything we have today, where you kind of know, like, no, you got to pitch hundreds of people to get through this. Like, it's a numbers game, and I didn't really realize that. So then I made a connection that offered to buy the company, and it was like, well, what I'm doing won't sustain, so I'm going to sell it, and that's how that came up. With Ellie, it was similar. It was, we're either going to have to raise a lot more money to scale this, or we can join this bigger platform and it can, have a long life. And the buyer for Ellie, so I mean, they still run it. Ellie.com is still a brand, and it's been 11 years since or 10 and a half years since we sold it to them. So like, that's another thing, is like, you want to see it continue and have new life. And we knew that we didn't have the tools that we needed to continue that. So that's how that happen. And I think that's a great question, by the way, because I think people think that the finish line is selling, and it's usually the departure, not the finish line, if that makes sense. It's like, it's when you're calling it a day.
Right. And the important aspect you explained was, when you do not have the same passion, you should exit. So that was
Yes.
very important thing, that if you are doing it, if you're building a business, build it with passion. Otherwise, exit.
Exactly.
Right.
Life
So
is
let's
short.
move
That's the other
forward.
thing, is like,
Yeah.
life is, if you have a better, advice I've heard a few times, which I think is great. If you have a better idea than what you're working on right now, and you have a lot of conviction that this is a way better project you should be doing, but you're stuck with this, that's a time to exit too. Like, if you're not using your time, it does. And if you're not using your time on your best idea, you're doing it wrong. Like, it's like, that was a quote that I used to hear. I think it was David Sachs said that originally, but it was, the idea of spending your time on something when you have a better idea behind you. The only part that I understand with that is, if you've raised money, you owe it to your investors to try to get them a return. So you might, when I say it's time to sell or it's time to move on, it might not be tomorrow, but it's time to start strategizing that exit. It could take you 4 years, 5 years to execute on that strategy, but you should start looking for that.
Right. So that was very brief. Let's move forward and come back to the marketing side again. So when you are providing a services to a company, or you are looking at a product, so what are the marketing essentials you offer to?
I mean, it really depends on the company. It's we have a list of probably 50 different services we can provide depending on what the company needs. It's really finding, depending on the brand, depending on the stage of the company, depending on the budgets, depending on what we're already seeing from their data. If they're not brand new, we can actually start to see like what's already working, what's not. We're going to plug in what we think would be the best channels to get their name out there and really convert that into revenue.
Right. Let's assume there's a services company, because selling a service and selling a product are two different things, and I believe that selling a service is way harder than selling a product. So
Okay.
let's assume the difficult part. So let's say there is a services company, and you have to do the marketing of that company.
Yeah.
What is the checklist you are going to do for them?
Yeah. So somewhere around here, but we wrote in our book, basically marketing, how we think about, it's 3 pillars: awareness, nurturing, and trust. So awareness is, how do you get your name out there and make people aware that you even exist? And then nurturing is, what do you do once people are aware you exist to actually convert them into a customer and then keep them coming back? And then trust, how do you build third-party validation before they know who you are, so that they go, oh, I can actually trust you're going to deliver on what you're doing. So that works with service or product companies. Like, that's ubiquitous across every type of business. Awareness, nurturing, and trust need to be covered, and all 3 are very important. Now, the service business side, I would say I do agree with you. I think it's a harder sale, and I think that's the kind of point. It's a sale. It maybe isn't a self-elected purchase, meaning someone's probably not going to sign up for a service by reading your landing page and signing up. Like, it has to be a very inexpensive service, very light touch, very compelling for that to make sense. Usually you're going to have a salesperson selling services. And so then marketing becomes a support system for that salesperson. So when I say awareness, nurturing, and trust, that salesperson is probably doing some of their own. They're probably going to events or networking or, prospecting or doing those things to do it. So we're going to do other types of ads to support that person. And then we're going to set up content. We're going to set up things to build trust with their customers, so that when that salesperson speaks, they're speaking with authority. So that person is listening and taking it seriously and trusting what they're saying, so that they feel comfortable that if there's a need for that service, they can trust that that salesperson and that company is going to deliver on it. That's how I would look at it.
Let's move forward to our next question, which is related to the marketing campaigns again.
Mhm.
And I want to ask you, how do you measure effectiveness of a marketing campaign? I know it is dependent on the goals. What are the goals of the marketing campaign?
Yeah.
But still, I strongly believe that behind every successful campaign, you have the analytics, you have the data behind it.
Yeah.
So, how would you cover that?
Behind every again, it comes down to every campaign, or not every, but almost every 99% of campaigns have missing pieces. There's always opportunity. My favorite thing about marketing and why I always focused on it is there's infinite opportunity cost, meaning you can always make it better. You can always do better. There's no point where you're like, I've done it, I'm done. And so that's where we create that framework of awareness, nurturing, and trust is, are we generating all the awareness we can across every channel? Like, does every single person in the world know about us? The answer is always no, because there's always new people. There's a birth rate. So, how are we reaching as many people as possible in a way that's efficient that actually builds our business, or at least every potential customer for our company, whatever that might mean? And so, but in a way that's efficient. So, you have to find ways constantly, and that changes all the time. It could be whether the cost on advertising on Meta versus Google versus TikTok versus Snapchat versus Twitter versus TV versus radio versus podcast versus billboards, whatever that new marketing channel is, they all ebb and flow and get more and less expensive. And so playing with that sort of trade desk, as it's been called, of figuring out where to buy media so that you can reach people in an efficient way, that's one piece. There's also tons of other ways to create attention, whether it's sponsoring events, whether it's being at events, whether it's doing viral, social content. Like there's all these other ways to continue to build that awareness and figuring out. Basically, I like firing on all cylinders. Like let's cover everything in some way and then start to figure out where to scale it. That's, I think, important. And continuing to add to that, because as a business, you want to continue reaching more and more and more people. That's the awareness piece. Then nurturing, how am I staying in touch with everyone I can uh, over the course of their purchase decision, from when they, again, become aware I exist to when they actually buy, and post purchase, so I keep them coming back. So that's email marketing, that's SMS, that's, that is content, because you get to engage them on a above and beyond a purchase decision by creating great content that still fits the narrative of your brand. It's referral programs. It's all these things that help bring word of mouth up too. And then trust, again, before you've built a really well-known brand, trust comes from third-party validation. So that's testimonials, that's reviews, that's endorsement deals, that's influencer marketing, that's also content, just to understand more for what you stand for. It's all these different pieces that you have to constantly reinvest in and build and build and build. And you just, how I look at marketing is, you start with a basic investment, you start looking at all these different channels, you start to see returns, and then you continue to expand it, expand it, expand it, while staying on top of the new trends and what makes sense to get into. Without, and this is important, don't chase shiny objects. The newest marketing channel doesn't necessarily mean you should jump on it. Like, so, most of the time you shouldn't. Most of the
That
time you should
makes a
let other
lot of
people.
sense.
Yeah. So yeah,
That makes a lot of sense that you do not have to jump on the shiny new platforms.
not at all. In
So,
fact, you're better
yeah,
off letting other people break it, mess with it, have trouble with
yeah,
it, than you jump in once they've figured it out.
right. So, the last question on the marketing side. So, I want to ask that because there are a lot of platforms, and I want to ask, does these big platforms like Google or other large platforms, do they support large brands more than the small startups or small companies?
They do, from like a actual like tactical, like they have teams that help the larger brands, whereas most, you're not going to get anyone at Google to help you directly. Like that's why having an agency, especially as a small and medium business, is critical. And then these larger brands, they end up in such a problem of groupthink. If I've watched, like, if you remember, I think it was about 10 years ago when Pepsi put out the ad that Kendall Jenner basically solved racism with a can of Pepsi, and it got tons of backlash. That was because they fired their agency and tried to do an ad themselves. Like, you got to be really careful keeping marketing in house. You want to have a balance. You do want internal marketing people for sure, but you want to have both. And Google and Facebook and having those partnerships, like, we spend $500 million a year on advertising. Most companies aren't going to compete with our level of, connections and relationships at those platforms versus, again, the bigger brands are going to get a little more treatment. There's other reasons for them to have partners, but small and medium brands, you won't get those relationships, you won't get that insight, you won't get those partnerships at all.
Right. Okay. Now, on the other section, uh, when you are building a team, what do you look into that team, or how do you build your teams?
Uh, I'm looking honestly more and more. What I've realized is you just want people that want to grow and build and want to are ambitious. Like that's what you want. In terms of experience, a lot of what we do is not rocket science, and a lot of it can be taught. Now, listen, there's positions where we need a really good web developer, we need a really good Facebook marketer, like that. We want people with experience, but a lot of the time, we're good at having those people to then teach more people that may not come in with the experience, but come in with the intelligence, come in with the ambition, come in with the drive, come in with the attitude of wanting to win. Like there's a lot more. And I just actually saw a backdated interview with Mark Zuckerberg about this, where it was about how you hired. And by the way, Steve Jobs is quoted saying the same thing, where it's like hire great people, not great experience. Like great talented people will figure it out. And that there are specific skill sets that you need sometimes for a job. So I don't want to like paint a broad brush here, but finding like the personality fit tends to be a lot more important. The motivation, that kind of stuff.
Right. But that judgment is very important. And it is not easy to judge that thing. So, how do you judge that? But that is very important because
Yeah.
many people say a lot of things that you have to hire someone better than you or things like that. But how do you judge that is very important. So,
Yeah.
what is the tool set you have to judge people on that criteria?
Yeah, it's the hire, what is it, hire slow and fire fast thing. Like you're right, interviews are proven to be worthless. Now you do get, you can ask all the questions you want, you can try, and you can paint the picture. Like what I try to do is paint a really hard picture of working here and like show like we're, and also frankly from a comp standpoint, like compensation standpoint, like start with a lot of performance driven compensation. So you get people like we get a lot of people on the sales side, for example. There's people that'll come in and we'll paint the picture of like the total comp package and they'll start negotiating for a higher base pay. And I'm like, if you're coming to us as a salesperson to have higher base, we're the wrong company. And we're pretty adamant about that, where it's like, this is not a place you're going to make a better base. Commissions are uncapped. Go as high as you want. And by nature, that attracts the people that want to grow and build and are confident in themselves because we're not going to pay them a lot unless they perform. And that is an important aspect is like, you're not here. You can't rest on your laurels here. If you want to make good money, you've got to work. So building compensation packages and being very upfront about them, so you attract people that are like, ready to believe in themselves and really put in the work. That's an aspect. And then just painting the picture again that it's hard work, that you're going to grind, that you're going to work at crazy hours, and like try to scare them off. I've found is a great one too, because then if they still show up after you just try to scare them as much as possible, it's a good sign.
So basically, you scare them from working with you, and then if they come, that means they are the right people.
Exactly.
Right.
That's
So
cool.
I do try this thing a lot. I do tell them that if you can't work hard, leave now.
Yeah.
It is the time.
Well,
Because
no, and
if
what
you're
I try to
coming to us, we
yeah, we say things like you will work harder than anywhere you've worked. It'll be long hours, it'll be intense. And I always say you're going to get overwhelmed. You're going to, there's going to be burnt. Like all these things are going to happen. And again, you get people that are like that we've definitely had people, on the phone say, "Oh, that sounds great." And then when the job offer comes, they're like, "Oh, I'm okay." It's like, great, perfect. Like you just saved us 6 months to a year of trying to get you to work and you not being the right person. So there's no issue with that. Like that's why we love to say this. It's like we want to paint a picture that is worse than you think than it's going to be. I want your expectations to be here. So when the job comes in and it's actually way better and it's fun, you're surprised and you're excited and you're stoked to be here. Like that's important too. Versus selling you on why you're going to be great and all the fluffy things we have to take care of you and shying away from it's hard. It could be hard sometimes. Like I'm not going to go there because then they're going to have these expectations of it's easy and then they get here and it's like it's miserable for them.
then that's a nice strategy, and it's similar to ours.
So
Okay, so what do you think about the remote work?
I don't. I think talented people that have had a chance to get like I shouldn't say talented, senior people that have been trained, that have done their thing, that are in a place in their career that they know what they're doing. It can work. It's still hard to build relationships, but it can work from a work standpoint. I think for younger people trying to learn the world of business and trying to figure things out, it is horrible. There's two parts to this. One is the educational side, learning, training, growing, seeing how people work, understanding culture, that stuff, I think is really important to new people. Two, there is proven psychological studies around, so when you work, your cortisol level goes up, you stress out, like it's just natural. Even if the work isn't like inherently stressful, working is stressful, it's just part of it. And being around people, like the water cooler conversation, socializing a little bit, brings your cortisol down, so you end up with a better balanced level of stress when you're around people and working from home. You don't get that balance, you don't bring that cortisol down, which is why you see a much higher rate of anxiety and burnout post pandemic. One of the reasons is because people are social creatures. We are biologically and chemically controlled by the idea of socializing, most people. And even introverts, like just not being around people at all and isolating yourself causes higher levels of anxiety and depression. And so, not working from home, that sort of twilight zone, groundhog day of wake up, go to your couch or your kitchen table or your desk or whatever you have, and working and then going back and never getting that break between, never socializing like in person, not being around people, not getting a breather, it is really bad for mental health. And so we've seen that a lot as well.
Right. But post COVID, you companies are finding it very difficult to convince resources
Correct.
as well, to convince talent as well,
Yeah.
because talent do not want to go to the offices. So that is a very serious challenge right now,
Yep.
post COVID.
Uh-huh. And I think
When you
two
do
things
not
there.
have
One, it's
the
by the way,
same passion,
it's not
you should have.
fair to be like everyone
So
back in the
that
office.
was
Like
very
we have
important
people in
thing,
43
that
states in
if
5
you are
countries
doing
right now.
it, if you're
I'm going to
building
tell
a
them all to
business,
move back
build it
to LA.
with
Like,
passion.
no.
Otherwise, exit.
So what we've done is we have a lot of talent, as I mentioned, senior people and people who have been here that are great, that they're going to work remote and their jobs aren't at risk and they're going to have a great time. And it's working for them. And maybe what we try to do is find ways to visit them or get them together in some ways. But there's going to be people that's what they do. And there are people
So
that,
when you are
again, you
providing a
can't speak
services
in
to a
broad brushes here.
company,
Everyone's different.
or
There are people that
you,
can work from home and enjoy it, and it's
so
fine.
what are the marketing
For all new people,
essentials
we're
you
starting to bring
offer
them
to
back
them?
in office in LA, and we have offices in LA, Boise, Chicago, Nashville. Excuse me, Nashville, and we're probably going to open in New York again. Um, and so we're going to hire in those places and bring people in. And so what we know is like, so we have an average tenure of an employee of like 2.25 years, I think is the exact number right now. So in 2 years, by nature, half my employees will be in office. Like that's how this will pan out. So it's like, just talking about averages, and we are keeping people longer and longer and longer. So we'll see if that plays out, but it could be 2, 3 years, whatever it is, half our people will be in office if we commit right now to all new people being in office. So it's a longer term strategy where it's like, this is how we're bringing people in. I will say there is pushback, but I think over time, as the studies come out and as they realize, like I'm watching the people in our office now, they're moving faster, they're getting better. And then other people start to see that and go, shoot, maybe I should be in the office because these people are getting further faster, doing better faster.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, and I hope you get successful in that. But I see a lot of challenges as well in this journey.
Yeah, I agree with you. By the way, we have pushback too. Like originally, I said everyone in LA, you're back in the office full time, and one of our great employees quit like 2 weeks later. Nope. And so it's like, okay, let's maybe talk about this a little more. And so again, as a business owner, we're always learning and rolling with the punches and figuring it out. And like now we're like, hey, you should be in the office. But if you're performing, don't worry about it. And by the way, if you're not performing and you're trying not to come in, like you're probably not going to work here very long. Like it from the people that are around the office. Like we're like, we'll be flexible, but then you've got to perform. Like you either we get to run the process and you're going to be here with us, or we're just going to hold you to an outcome. And then if you miss the outcome, you have nothing to hang on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, that when you are going to bound that with the performance, that makes a lot of sense, that you will have a very valid reason that now you have to come to office, or
Exactly.
you are no more needed. So
Yeah.
that's a good strategy to have. Okay, what do you think about the generative AI and how it is going to impact the marketing side?
Yeah, so we built our own AI system so I started studying AI 9 years ago and started working on building our own system that would be able to complement it. So generative AI I found to be, I knew it was coming. Thankfully I studied Ray Kurzweil, who his timeline ended up being exactly what happened. Like he predicted 2023 was going to be the year that AI started to mimic human intelligence. So here we are. And so we were able to launch our own AI system in September of 22, right before ChatGPT 3. And yeah, and it basically What I think it's going to happen is I think the objective parts of marketing are going to come first. So I think it's going to be more the data analytical optimization side of marketing will really be what proliferates. So what I did was we collect basically 8,000 companies' marketing, media, and revenue data in real time, run it through our pipes, and then actually make adjustments on individual companies based on how the market's moving. So we're using AI to basically augment our strategies and give us insights onto individual companies faster based on the market. Using that now and basically educating it more and more and more on what dictates a good marketing performance and how things actually succeed. So we started there, and we also invested in a company called Go Charlie, which is more the generative AI on the creative side, the blog side, et cetera. It's a large language model focused on marketing. And the combination of those two things, I think, are going to be really where it benefits. So you have the analytical side, and then you have the actual creative side. Creative's going to take longer, but as you can educate what creative works, I think more and more, it'll at least be like an intern. I think of it right now as like a 17-year-old intern that's studying the hell out of this all the time that could make great suggestions, but probably takes a little bit more expertise to polish, but at least gets you a good portion there.
That makes a lot of sense, and I agree with that. That creative part is going to take a little bit longer time, but
Yeah.
eventually that will also be overtaken by the AI.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Eric, thank you so much for joining us. It was very insightful conversation, and I enjoyed it thoroughly.
Yeah,
And
no,
I thank you a lot. I thank you a lot, and
yeah. Thank you for having me.
yeah, thank you so much for watching the podcast. And keep watching, keep subscribing, and we will bring more tech stars to your screens. Thank you. Have a nice day.